Today's a really special day for me. Dennis, you're making my day, I hope you know. How many of you know Dennis Prager? Yeah. Dennis Prager's our guest this morning, and he's had a big impact on my life, even though we come from different religious traditions. And in fact, many of you, if you've read my first book, Imagine Happiness, which was really, a shot in the dark at trying to get a book out there, it actually came, Dennis, from listening to your radio program. So Dennis, as an introduction, Dennis has a nationally syndicated radio program, has millions of fans and followers who listen to him. And but you're not just a political commentator. You really speak a lot to the philosophy of life and to religion and to what's happening in the hearts of Americans. So let's begin by giving Dennis Prager a round of applause and welcoming him. So I'll tell you how I met you, okay? Okay, so I'm listening to the radio. Every Friday I go down to a ranch where I pray and kind of work on my sermon. And I always leave around 10 on Friday. And so I'm flipping through the channels, and this guy gets on and he says something like, happier people make the world a better place, and unhappy people make the world a worse place. And I hear that as I'm flipping the channels, so I stop and I listen. And that was how I found your show, was through the Happiness Hour. And as I listened to it, you began to talk about the virtues of happiness. Out of that, I did a sermon series on a Christian theology of happiness that became a book, and then I dedicated that book to you.
Very touched. Thank you very much.
But Dennis, thank you so much for being here. So you have a new book out called The Ten Commandments?
Right. The Ten Commandments are by God and Moses. I just want to make that clear.
Yeah.
It's very disconcerting when I get introduced, and now the Ten Commandments by the author, Dennis Prager.
Yeah.
Well, not exactly. I'm explaining the Ten Commandments.
Yeah.
I'm not writing them. I believe that the greatest guidebook for a good life has been written, the Bible generally, but very specifically, the Ten Commandments. And I make the case for each one of them as brilliant and as relevant today, if not even more relevant than 3,200 years ago. I mean, when you think about it, the late Bronze Age is when this was written. Even if you're an atheist, you have to be a little overwhelmed by the fact that something that old is so powerful and so relevant today. And I make the case, as a general statement, that if people lived by just this is it, if they only lived by the Ten Commandments, we would get rid of locks. There would be no locks on our doors.
Yeah.
There would be no jails. The police would be involved in helping motorists who were stranded on the road, not in cordoning off areas of murder. It almost makes me cry to think what the world would be like if people simply lived by the Ten Commandments. And each one is genius. And I'll give one example. And each one I try to show its genius. Honor your father and mother. It doesn't say love your father and mother. Mm-hmm. We're told to love God, we're told to love the stranger, we're told to love our neighbor, but we're not instructed to love our parents. And it's part of the genius of the Bible, and specifically the Ten Commandments. A lot of people have ambivalent feelings towards parents. God knows that. That's okay. What's not okay is not to honor them. Mm-hmm. And if people understood that, we'd have a different society in so many ways. I have discovered through the radio show, 33 years is a long time, to talk to people 3 hours a day. And I discovered that there is in America today an epidemic that nobody is talking about. And the epidemic is of adult children who refuse to speak to a parent.
Yeah.
It is so common that, again, it's heartbreaking. Men call my show and break down in tears over a son or daughter who has refused to speak to them. And my heart breaks for these people. And I would love to do one survey. I'd like to know if the same degree of ignoring parents, the same amount happens among religious Jews and Christians as among secular Americans. I am convinced that way disproportionately, you will have this which is most of the time, not in every case, but most of the time, wrong behavior of ignoring a parent is among the secular. Because as ambivalent as you may feel about your parents, if you're committed to the Bible and you're committed to the Ten Commandments, you know you have to honor mother and father.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the commandments that I feel like a lot of adults go, well, this commandment is for children.
No.
Right?
Exactly. It's more for adults, actually.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And what's the difference between, I mean, truly the difference between honoring your parents and loving them?
I'll tell you, there are presidents that I have not loved, but when they enter the room, I stand. The press stands for Republican and Democratic presidents when they come into the room for a press conference.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with love.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. And so the Ten Commandments really are, one of the things that I find funny is how many people say they follow the Ten Commandments, but obviously don't. When I was working with a television show in Burbank that was for TLC, and it was a big program, I was sitting at a table with a bunch of B and C list celebrities and a director, and we were friends, and I was the religious guy at the table, right? And there were about 10 of us, and it was a religious show. And I'm talking to the director, and I asked him about his religion. I actually thought he was Jewish. He was Catholic. And he said, well, I'm not really religiously Catholic anymore, but I believe in the Ten Commandments. That's my code for life. And everybody around the table went, yeah, me too. I believe in the Ten Commandments. The Ten Commandments are my moral code as well. And and then there's this kind of awkward silence when they're looking at me because I haven't affirmed anything. And I said, well, what are the Ten Commandments?
Oh. God, did you ask a trick question? I tell you.
And they got two.
Yes.
They collaborated.
Right.
They got two right and three wrong.
That was the perfect response that you did. People can't name them, and in fact, if people, as I said, if they really did, we would all be happy. I think that would be awesome. For example, you have to begin with the notion that it comes from God.
Yeah.
If God didn't give the Ten Commandments, and Moses did, or a committee of people 1,000 years later in redacting the Bible, as the Bible critics put it, then why listen? If men gave it, men can change it.
Yeah.
And that's critical. But if God gave it, then it has a transcendent meaning.
My favorite part, I remember once on one of your shows you were talking about, you asked the question of the audience, if you could add one commandment, what would you add?
Yeah, oh, you heard that?
It was great.
Yeah.
One of the things that I thought was so powerful about it is that there really wasn't a very good 11th commandment.
That's right. It's not missing anything.
Yeah.
Exactly. People would call in to honor your children.
And this was like an hour. I mean, we're talking millions of people contributing to conversation.
That's why I've learned so much from doing the show, because I have this huge classroom of people, of intelligent people, reacting. So people would call in honor your children. But what do you mean honor your children? Raise good children.
Yeah.
And by the way, part of honor your father and mother is that mothers and fathers should understand they're not in business to be loved.
Yeah.
They're in business to be honored.
Yeah.
Parents who want to be loved will not raise good children.
Yeah.
Because they won't, because there's no point in raising a child that if you do it correctly, your child won't love you at that moment.
One of my favorite and I think most unique points of your book was when you said that if there was one commandment that summed up all 10, it was thou shalt not steal.
Right, that's right, it does. Because look, murder is the stealing of a life.
Yeah.
False witness is stealing of justice. Coveting is the stealing of any of the things that you covet. Mm-hmm. Adultery is the stealing of a spouse. So yes, and of course, by the way, I write in there that I wish, as odd as this sounds, I wish I were alive during the era of slavery, because I would have asked religious people who defended slavery, how do you reconcile that with do not steal? Do not steal was originally, in its origin, first before property, do not steal a person.
Yeah.
The very origins of the transatlantic slave trade violated do not steal.
Yeah, and the slavery that exists in the Bible is not the slavery
it's
indentured
it's
servitude.
bonded indemniture, exactly.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, the book is truly powerful. I actually loved, and we'll be speaking on this today, we're talking about the moral mind, and I really appreciated the last commandment, of course, is do not envy, and the idea that...
Do not covet.
Do not covet. Yeah, you're right.
No, the only reason I say that, and I feel pretty self-conscious correcting you.
No,
in your
it's
own
fine,
church.
you know?
I just have to say for
No,
the record.
no, it's fine.
No. But the only reason is I actually go out of my way in the thing to say it's covet, not envy.
Yeah,
Envy
that's right.
is sad and unfortunate, but coveting means I want to take away that specific thing.
Yeah, so coveting is envy with intention.
That's right.
Yeah, that's good. And of course, in some ways, well, I could say that stealing, is always rooted in some
In
coveting.
coveting.
Yeah.
That's right. By the way, it is the only commandment of the 10 that is about thought, not behavior.
Yeah.
And in general, the Old Testament, which I have taught from the Hebrew my entire life, almost never bans a thought.
Yeah.
It is very behavioral, the Jewish text. But this is one rare exception which shows how bad it is to aim to take away something that belongs to another.
I want to ask one more question. You've got millions of people watching, and not all Americans. We have people watching in Europe and Asia, basically everywhere that's industrialized. And I guess I would ask one question. If you could get one idea across to everybody, what would that one thing be?
If I had to get one idea, it is behavior is everything.
Yeah.
That's what I would. It is behavior. That is why I am so behaviorist in happiness. Mm-hmm. Act happy even if you don't feel it, because it's a moral obligation to everyone who enters your life that you have a happy disposition. Mm-hmm. Bad mood is to me exactly like bad breath. It is exactly, and we brush away our bad breath. We should, and so too we should brush away our bad mood. Inflicting bad mood is like inflicting body odor on people. We don't do that. And in every area, I don't care why people do good. I want them to do good. If the primary reason you want to do good is to have your name on that hospital, God bless you. Because the person who is now seeing, who would have been blind, is seeing thanks to your desire to have your name on that building. Behavior, if you said only one thing.
That's it.
Oh, then that's my one thing.
Okay. Great. Yeah.
Thank you.
Amen. Well, hold on. So I just really want to encourage everyone to get this book. Honestly, just reading a book on the 10 Commandments will help you know the 10 Commandments. I want to encourage you, if you can't name all 10 right now where you're sitting, please get this book. And by the time you're done, you'll know them in a row, because it's really important. It's good to know that I shouldn't covet, that I shouldn't, and many of the things that we do throughout the day, we don't recognize it. We're actually breaking the fundamental 10 Commandments that were given to us as Jews and or Christians. So get the book. You'll love it. You'll really enjoy it. And Dennis, thank you so much for taking the time.
It's an honor to be with you.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
So glad to have you here.
Thank you.
God bless you.
Thank you very much.